Let me start with something that might surprise you. Most parents who experience grooming-related harm don't say, I ignored my gut. They say, I never had a bad feeling. No alarm, no dread, no moment where instinct kicked in. And that sentence, I never had a bad feeling, is where shame often begins. I want to tell you why that sentence actually makes sense and why trusting your gut was never the right tool for this job. I'm Anna Sonoda. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and this is Known and Trusted, a podcast about how trust actually works, how it's misused, and how families can protect children earlier without fear. This episode is for parents who care deeply, for caregivers who show up, for anyone who has ever looked back and thought, why didn't I see it sooner? You didn't fail. You were never given the right safety model. But that changes today. We've been told for decades, trust your gut. Listen to your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And that advice works when danger is loud. Your gut is an excellent detector of things like sudden threats, aggression, and clear violations. But grooming is not a sudden event. It is a slow exposure. Which brings me to the metaphor I want you to remember from this episode. Your gut is like a smoke alarm. Grooming is carbon monoxide. Smoke alarms work when there's fire, noise, heat, obvious danger. Carbon monoxide, on the other hand, is different. It's invisible, odorless. It builds slowly. By the time you feel dizzy, the exposure has already been happening. Grooming works in a similar way. It doesn't trigger our fear. It triggers familiarity. It doesn't override our instinct. It sidesteps it. That's the shift. Parents don't miss grooming because they weren't paying attention. They miss it because they were watching for smoke while the risk was building. Here's something most parents are never told. Predators don't rely on force. They rely on systems. They look for environments with high trust, low oversight, overextended adults or supervisors, and high social pressure to be nice. They're not asking, how do I scare this family? They're asking, how do I belong here? Belonging disarms instinct. Grooming is the common denominator across settings, ages, and communities. The behaviors adapt. The strategy, however, stays the same. When clarity finally comes, parents often turn inward. I should have known. I've trusted the wrong person. But here's the clinical truth. You were taught to rely on instinct. You were not taught to evaluate patterns. That's not a personal failure. That's a cultural gap. And cultures can change. And hopefully through this podcast and others, we can make that change happen. So let's answer the real question. Anna, if we lighten our reliance on gut instinct, what do we rely on instead? 3 things: structure, patterns, and evaluation. Your gut is not wrong, it's just not sufficient. So instead of asking, do I feel good or bad about this person? Ask, what is this relationship doing to the structure around my child? That shift changes everything. So let's break this down by age. We all know that age matters in the development of our children, and especially when it comes to an issue like grooming, because it adapts based on the targeted child's age. So if your child is under the age of 6, at this age, your gut is especially unreliable because everything looks normal. Young children want adult approval, are naturally compliant, and cannot report power shifts. So instead of relying on feelings, rely on structure checks. Ask yourself, is this adult ever alone with my child unnecessarily? Are routines consistent, or does one adult or older child get special access with my child? Am I always welcome to observe or supervise? Why this works. Protection at this age lives in supervision, not in conversation or dialogue. If your child is elementary age kids can talk, but grooming doesn't feel scary yet. So instead of asking, did anything make you uncomfortable today? Ask, do the rules stay the same with this person? Does anyone let you do things other adults or older kids don't let you do? Does anyone ask you to keep things just between the two of you? Why this works? Because grooming at this age introduces exceptions, not fear. If your child is in middle school, this is where gut instinct really breaks down, because grooming often looks like mentorship, being chosen, or special attention. So instead of asking, do you trust them? Let's map influence. Ask yourself, whose opinion matters most to my child? Who do they want to impress or protect? That's a really important distinction, and we can talk about it at another time in another episode. But who do they want to impress or protect? And ask your child, who do you talk to when you don't want to talk to me? Why this works? Because grooming here shifts emotional loyalty, not behavior. If your child is in high school grooming hides in autonomy. So instead of asking, are you okay? Ask, who sets limits with this person? Can you say no without negative consequences? Does this adult or older child ever put you in the middle of adult problems or adult situations? This works because the issue isn't closeness. It's who holds the power when something goes wrong. If you're listening to this and thinking, I didn't do this before, please hear me. You weren't careless. You weren't naive. You were never given this framework. But that changes today. If this episode gave you language you didn't have before, help me widen the circle of safety. Follow the podcast, subscribe, share it, repost clips. You can always email me at contact@annasonoda.com to share reflections, stories, or concepts you'd like me to dive into deeper. I read all of your communication, and they often shape episodes. If you need more information, you can always explore my past interviews at annasonoda.com. You can read or listen to Duck Duck Groom, Understanding How a Child Becomes a Target. If you're a survivor, think about exploring the guided journal, whether alone or with a therapist. This work improves the lives of children wherever they are being raised, and it can also support survivors. As I close, remember, your gut didn't fail you. It just wasn't designed to detect carbon monoxide. Now you have better tools, and better tools change outcomes. So remember, show up, look up, speak up, because trusting your gut isn't enough, but understanding grooming changes everything. I'm Anna Sonoda, and this has been an episode of Known and Trusted.